Having crazy hair day.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Go With Your Gut podcast. Today we have a special guest and a coach, Sheri Berger, and she is a consultant with Here to There Consulting. She is a speaker, an author, and so much more. And Sheri, I'll let you introduce yourself a little bit more.
Good morning. Oh, no, wait. Good afternoon. I think it's noontime. I'm Sheri Berger, and I'm the owner of Here to There Consulting, and we educate business owners to balance those tools of having finances, our business, and our life all in line so that you can create the life and business that you love. I'm a transitional coach. So when you're moving from here to there in your life or your business, I am the go-to girl for sure. So I've helped people through all kinds of different transitions, which sometimes you got to just go with your gut. But what if you had somebody coming alongside you to help you create a custom roadmap so that you could move from here to there?
Absolutely. Thank you, Sheri. And we will just hop right in because we all know that starting a business or just going through life, you have to deal with lots of things, all the things. So, Sheri, tell us about a time that wherever it was in your life, you had to go with your gut, and how did it pay off for you?
Well, there was a time that I was going to write a book, but I have a form of dyslexia. I'm
Mm,
not dyslexia. I'm smart. I have ways around it, but we all have our things, right? I also have anxiety and depression, which people
yep.
don't know that. The point is, it doesn't matter what your obstacles are, but you can find a solution. So my thing with that was, who am I to write a book? I
Yep.
can't write a book. It's too hard to write a book. But I kept being tapped on the shoulder by God, I say, that I needed to write a book. And I'm like, oh, really? So I struggled with it. And then I actually dedicated my book to my second dad, who I lost 2.5 years ago, which was so hard. And I kept trying to write my book, but I kept having those bad,
Yep.
right? And I
Yep.
went to a conference, and they love to do this at a conference. You write what your breakthrough is and you break a board, but it's more psychological, right?
Yep.
So when I broke the board, then I had to figure out, how do I write a book? So I pulled a whole team together. I wrote a book. I thought I'd get it done. This was July 2021. So during the pandemic, I was out helping all small businesses. I got so busy, I didn't have time to write my book because they were shutting down all small business. I was opening them all. I ended up winning the Kansas Business Women Advocate of the Year because I was just doing the right next thing in that. But in July, I went to this conference, July 2021, and it was in Texas. Oh my God, talk about hot. But we broke a board. And so I came back and decided I have to make this happen. So I pulled a whole team together. I want to get done by the end of the year so that we could go into 2022 and I could have my book. Well, if you've ever written a book, it's hard. It
Mm-hmm.
is. It's not impossible, but they want you to write it, rewrite it, edit it again. Are you serious? I self-published,
Yep.
but it was so much. So then I was like, okay, when it didn't get done by January 1st, I was like, well, I want it out by Valentine's Day. Well, I did learn this. God has a sense of humor, and you're not going to get something done. How God decides. So I kept reworking, redoing my plan, because we always need a plan, right? Because if
Right.
we don't have a plan, we plan to fail. But I thought, well, I'll get it out by Valentine's Day. Remember, I help you create a life and business that you love so you could do self-care and take care of yourself for Valentine's. Nope. Finally, it went live. And I noticed the day it went live. Do you know when my book went live?
What?
When God decided, but it was 2/22/22. And no, my editor or I did not pick that date, but it was 2022. So I did it, and I went with my gut, and I never gave up. And I got frustrated because I literally thought in 6 months I should have put all this together.
Yeah.
And I guess I did in 8 months, but I'd already been writing on my book, but I kept getting in that obstacle of, who am I? And this is hard. And right. So when you
Yep.
get in those, you still got to go with your, because God wouldn't leave me alone. He was like, you need to write this book. So I write this book, and by the way, it has made so much impact. I have my copy. It's not a real copy of it, but God has made a huge impact in my book. I have a real book out in my car. And of course, it's out on Amazon and everything else.
Yep.
But that was a time that I had to go with my gut, even though it was scary. And I had to get editors, and I don't remember how many editors and whatever. And I also realized I had already written this book. You see what I'm saying? Because it's all the things that I done. And guess what chapter 1 is?
What?
Mindset.
Yeah.
Because mindset's what gets in the way of us acting on our gut, right?
Absolutely.
So yeah, that was a big time I did that.
I love that. And, I think for me anyway, when we have that big thing that we need to do, and like you said, who am I to do this? Who am I to do this? And most of the time, when you're supposed to do something big, when you keep getting that little, tap, tap on the shoulder, do this, do this, do this. I've found that when that happens to me, it usually comes from a couple of different random people. And I'm like, okay, fine. Let me figure out a way how to do this. But it will always come with the challenges. It will not be easy. And yeah, I mean, it'll be I don't know how to do this. Okay, you can figure it out. There will be roadblocks, and there will be the self-doubt in there of, how do I do this? I don't know how to do this. So walk me through how you were with that internal, how the heck do I even get this done? How do I figure that out? Because for me, sometimes I always have that end goal in mind of, here's where I want to get, here's the finish line. That's the pretty, the fun, the sexy part, right? But it's all the crap in between that you got to trudge through, and you got to work through all the things inside in between. So walk me through how you've dealt with that.
Well, like in 2020, this is why I was going to write a book. Okay. Back in 2020, March 2020, I was going to be on a women business cruise as one of their speakers, because I do seminars and workshops and speaking, but I hadn't written a book. And a bunch of the people that were going to be on the cruise, women business cruise, March 2020. By the way, you know what happened to that, right? It got canceled. But I was trying to get my book done. And a friend of mine, a business associate of mine, she was going to be on the cruise as well. And she wrote 2 books in the time I didn't get mine done. And then she died, which is sad, before we would have been on the cruise. But she got that done, right? Because she had these. So back in 2019, I knew, we all met, I was going to write a book. But I kept saying, it's so hard, it's this, it's that. And then when 2020 hit, like I said, I got on this mission. Well, I cried. I don't know about you, but I cried for the first 2 weeks when they shut down the world. And then God's like, you have a whole toolbox. Go use it, Sheri. So I went out and I did free seminars and workshops, and I tried to help and save as many people and businesses as I could, because I'm a heart person, and it was breaking my heart. And so, but you could only help the people that would open their hands, not the ones that were doing this. And it frustrated me. But I had to find people that had the same passion as me, and those were the ones I could help. So when I got busy on that, but then also, my second dad, Gerald, in February, I seen him 2020. 2020, February, just before the world shut down. I had seen him. He was not doing well. And the world shut down in March, like you said. I'm like, everybody knows. But I wanted to get my book written to put it in his hands. But I kept coming up with excuses. And then when I didn't accomplish that, and we were in 2021, and I kept trying to work on my book, trying to save the world. I can't save the world. Only God saves the world, right? But just being one of God's tools in what was going on, because everybody always asked me, they're like, Sheri, what did you do? Because I won multiple awards, by the way. And I wrote a book and blah, blah, blah. And people come up to me and I'm like, these are God winks. I didn't do anything. I did, like you're saying, from your gut, what I felt God wanted me to do next in that phase, that season of my life. Because in saying that, I will let you know this: life is short. I lost my second dad, August 2020. 5 days after his 81st birthday,
Mm.
August 30th, 2020. It was hard because then you go to a funeral and it's weird, right?
Yep.
But the funny thing is 3 days before my son's wedding in Baltimore, Maryland, I eat healthy. I take care of my health. I'm real big about health. I lost 87 pounds back in 2010. But anyway, 3 days before my wedding, my son's wedding, my whole colon was shutting down. Some scar tissues from one of my C-sections. My girls were like 16 and 19 that only had C-section. So it was a long time, right? Blocked my colon, pissed everything off. I should have died. I should have been on a, what is it called? I should have got put on a bag. They told my husband and I scary crap. I've never married love of my life, but I've never seen the man turn white. He turned white as a ghost. I was like, and I was on morphine by the time they're throwing all this on us. So I looked at him, I'm like, babe, what else can we do? And he's like, honey, this is all and they even told me to give him my wedding rings, but I didn't even know how you even knew that was my husband because it happened so fast. Well, by the grace of God, I am not on a bag. I made it through that. Everything. And it took me, my husband would even tell you, like 4 or 5 months to get over that huge trauma. And people thought I was fine. And it took me over a year to be able to eat and do, now I have a great nutrition program, that vitamins I take, all that, which I learned about 4.5 years ago. But this was almost, it was in 2019 before the world shut down. But anyway, the point in saying what I'm saying is, I realized then I've had a lot of loss. A lot of us have had a lot of loss, but I realized how short life is. Yep. And so I have been trying since, not that I didn't before, but more intentional in doing, because God wasn't done with me.
Yeah.
God has more for me to do. Right. And my mission in life is to make a difference in yours. So my mission in life is to make a difference in others. My mission in my business is to help you create the life and business that you love, which my vision, mission, and purpose thing is chapter 2 of mine, because we need to have them in line. But when I'm doing my vision, mission, and purpose right, I put God first, my husband next, obviously, my family, and then my business, because that's in line how God wants me to run my life. Now, I can't say I do that right all the time, because you know what? I'm human.
Sure.
And I screw up.
Yep.
And I'm not perfect. And I'm not saying I am. But what I'm saying is it changed me. So when big things happen in your life, they can either empower you to do more, or they can kill you, right? It's your choice in your mindset of how you deal with it. And you know what? I'll just let you know, I don't know how people walk through life without having a strong faith life in God, right? Yeah. Without God, I always say you can do all things through Christ who strengthens you. But without God, how do you get through the difficult things in your life? So anyway, so in 2020, I really wanted to finish my book. My dad died before I finished. My second dad died before I finished my book. I was so disappointed in myself. I went to that conference in 2021, and then God was like, you and I know. Well, first of all, my friend Gerald, my second dad, he's a Christian. I know he's in heaven. And I was like, I wish I could put this book in his hand. By the way, it's dedicated. And also I have a whole write-up on Gerald, because Gerald's a lot of why I do what I do today. But what was I going to say? I know that he looked down from heaven. I know he was proud of me. I know, right? Yep. And then, of course, I dedicated my book not only to Gerald, but like my husband's been a huge impact, my children, all the people that you have in your life that are important. So to remember who those people are when you're trying to move from here to there. By the way, I talk about those 4 type people that you need in your life in chapter 4 in my book, but to make sure that you have those, right? When you're trying to get through, because you know what, if you're trying to do something, like a lot of people hate public speaking. I joined Toastmasters 17 years ago because I was terrified of public speaking. People are like, you're terrified? Because now I get paid and I do it for a living. And I've taught classes and I get up, and one person was like, you come alive when you public speak. But I was terrified. Yeah. So I joined Toast. And then when I joined Toastmasters, every 4 weeks I would give a speech. And people were like, oh my God, you're phenomenal. And I'm like, no, I'm terrified. So you got to jump out of the plane. So when I'm saying that is when you want to overcome something, you've got to just keep jumping, jump, and trust God, right? Because God's going to catch you. And I hate to steal your thunder, but you won't believe what service was on Sunday. So I went to 8:00. I was late. I came in the middle of the sermon. So I had to come and go back at 10:30. But it was about eagle wings, right? And an eagle. And if you look at a bald eagle, and if you watch the babies, they will always cover, right? They like swoop them, they cover them. And so they were talking about, well, and there's also a song, a Christian song on eagle wings, but it's about how God is always covering you and believing you. And women, I know we have women intuition. And so we have that gut in us.
Yep.
But we also have, if you're a Christian like me, have God in you. And so if you go with your gut and you go with what God wants you to do, and you know what? I've learned this new prayer to make sure that God will slam the doors where he doesn't want you to go, but open the ones or even push me. And you know what, Lauren, you already know I'm very independent, outspoken. By the way, if you can't tell, I was raised by 2 East Coast parents and I grew up in Alaska. So that's my excuse for my personality. But more importantly, you know what? I argue with God a lot. And you're like, what? Yeah, God tells me to do something. And I'm like, God, really? Because I want to do. And God argues. And I even told my pastor this the other day. He was laughing at me. But it was in Sunday school, actually. I'm like, I argue with God. And he's like, I know you do in front of God and everybody. But I do. But God always wins. So if we don't go with our gut, we don't do what God wants. Did you hear how long it took me to get my book finally? 2019, I worked a little bit, but then it was too hard. It was blah, blah, blah. And then 2020, I will be honest with you, I got more important things to get done. And I still think I did, but I still was making excuses until I went to a conference in 2021 and just said, okay, we're doing this, God, right? So you just got to, and you said the glory of writing the book to the end. And my book is not a bestseller because I didn't jump. There's a bunch of hoops to jump. I just wanted to get it out by the time I got it done. But it has made such a big impact for a lot of people. But what was I going to say? Until we finally, that whole journey that I just told you about, long story short, how much did I grow as a person? Sometimes writing the book and getting the book published is your end goal. But what about the journey along the way? Now, I will tell you this. People are always like, should I write a book? And I'm like, why are you writing a book? And they're like, well, you wrote a book. Shouldn't I write a book? Why are you writing a book? It's a lot of work to write a book. So if you have a reason to write a book, but I mean, I did the same thing when I went to go get a degree, right? People nowadays don't always get a degree. Because why are you doing that? Are you just doing it because Lauren did it or Sheri did it? Or are you doing it because it's getting you where you want to be, right? Me, this is basically a great book for a coach in a box. So people that can't afford to maybe work with me or whatever and want to try to do it on their own, there's worksheets that go with this, that kind of stuff. So I wrote my book to make a bigger impact and to help more people. But you got to ask yourself, not only going with your gut, but why are you doing that? And if it's to keep up with the Joneses or whatever, but writing a book is hard. Getting a degree is hard. I have a degree from Park University. It's hard. Is that what you really need to do? Spend your money, your time. You need to evaluate your why on top of your gut when you're trying to go with something. And like I said, if you're like me, arguing with God, God always wins. I don't understand. There you go. But that's just my personality. I'm a little bit of a strong, independent woman. What the heck? But God knows that. And he loves me anyway.
And whether it is, well, no matter what it is, let's say that whatever the end goal, whatever it is that whoever is watching, listening, anything like that, the journey, the work in between to get to the end goal, it's going to be hard. It's going to be different than you think. It's going to make you do a lot of things that you're just like, you want to argue with. No, I don't want to do this. No, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. That sounds terrible. But I mean, Sheri, you and I have both learned that we came out alive, and most of the time, the terrible things that we thought were going to be terrible and, take us over the edge, those are the things that get you to that next level. Those are the things that make you grow out of that comfort zone. Those are the things that make you figure out that you are stronger than you think. I listened to something the other day, and it was talking about, we sit in whatever season of life we're in, and we say,
Yep.
why is this not changing? I've been doing all the things. Why is this not changing? Why are the things around me not changing? And it was because the situation that you're in, the circumstances, may not change. Who's going to change? Who's going to grow? You are.
You are. God's growing you in the process, right?
And that's it's a really hard concept to get your head wrapped around when you want to be, I don't know, stubborn. Neither one of us have that in us. I think we can both agree. But when you want to be independent and stubborn and say, no, I got this. I know what I want. I know where I'm going. And then there's that thing, whether God got whatever for me, and I know you, it is kind of one and the same, but it's that thing of, you're funny. You think it's up to you. Okay, here's where you need to go. Here's what you need to do. And then you give in to that and you say, fine, let me do the hard thing. Let me figure out the dang hard thing. And then all of a sudden you get to the other side and it wasn't real fun, but you got through it. And now you look behind you, right? And you're like, whoo, look what I just did. Okay. And then you get connected with people that you're now like, hey, I just went through that. Let's talk about how you need to get through it. Because, you worked through the fear, you worked through the conflict, whether it be internal, whether it be external, because it will always come. The self-doubt will always come. The I don't want to. The excuses will always come. And then you work through all that, no matter how long it takes, because sometimes it takes a little longer to say, fine,
Yep.
fine, I will do it, whatever. And then you do it, and it's like, oh, this is what I was supposed to learn. Here, this is where I'm supposed to be right now. Okay. So how do you work through that fear of imposter syndrome? Because no matter what people are doing, no matter where they want to go, no matter what they want to do, I've found that imposter syndrome creeps in a lot of different ways. And it's that fear of, will I be successful? Will I be able to get this done? Will it be good? And I strive for progress over perfection, because if I strive for I always want things to be as good as they can be, right? But you got to start somewhere. We're not all great at everything right off the bat. So how do you deal with that? Because I know you do a lot, and kind of like you said, joining Toastmasters when you were terrified, you didn't know how to write a book, and you're like, okay, let's figure this out. So how do you work through that imposter syndrome, that fear of, I don't know? Because the unknown for a lot.
Well, first of all, I don't know, and I'm not trying to get on my high horse about being a Christian, but I do know that I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, right? Yeah. And I have to hold on to that a lot, because I'll be like, God, I can't do this. And God's like, you're not supposed to do this. You can do all things through Christ who strengthens you. And God works everything out for his good. And so a lot of the things, I've actually been through a lot in my life, and I'm overcomer. I'm not a victim, right? And I always say, it doesn't matter how many times you get knocked down. It's a matter of how many times you get back up and do what is the right next thing, right? But we need to pray to God, not just try to figure out us. But I coach people through this all day long, because I have a whole toolbox that I've learned, like you were talking about, from my life, right? Mm-hmm. My life has not some people look at me, somebody's like, oh my gosh, you get up on stage and you come to life. And yeah, I do. That's what I do. I do coaching and training, and I'm good at what I do. But don't worry. 20 years ago, that was not who I was, right? God grew me through seasons and changes in your life. And we're always going through a new season. I even talk about that in my book, right? What season are you in? Like right now, I got empty nest syndrome, and I got aging parents, and I got, a lot of stuff going on in my life. And so it's a lot, but God's in it all, right? And God already knew this was going to happen. But when you argue with God and you don't go through those right doors, or you don't, whatever it is, right? Then it makes the struggle harder for you. So that's what you have to. But getting a coach, I have always had a coach. I've always had mentors. I've always had very close friends. And I didn't realize that people didn't have that in their life. Chapter 4, again, is all about that, right? And what do we do with those toxic people or those naysayers that are trying to get in the way of whatever God's purpose in our life is, right? I mean, and being a parent, oh my God, I raised 4 kids, right? That is hard. Because it doesn't always go the way, and you didn't get the instructions, and you don't always know. And marriage is hard, and life is hard, right?
Yeah.
But choose your heart in all of that, right? But if you work at God and you're doing what God wants you to do as you move through those doors, it makes it so much easier. So prayer, doing the serenity prayer, I actually have the serenity prayer in here because, you can't control situations. You can't control people. You can't control what's going to happen, but you can control you, and you can grow to be who God wants you to be, in your next phase of your life. But God, what is it called? Those are called growing pains. You know that?
Yep.
They're growing pains. I know I can write a book now. I know I can get a degree. I know I can get up on stage and come up with a topic and speak. I know I can do podcasts. I do them all the time. I know I can do, but did I know that back then? No, I said it was scary. I don't want to do that. And God's like, you have a message. Do you know that God had me start? I have a group called Kansas City Inspired Coffee with Sheri on Facebook back in 2019, October 2019. God told me to start doing that. I argued with God. I don't like videos. I don't like pictures of myself. I don't want to do this. Blah, 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 right? But in 2019, I started Kansas City Inspired Coffee because God told me to, right? Well, guess what happened in 2020, March? I was already ahead of the game without knowing it. God's like, you have a message. He actually told me to humble myself. I'm like, no, God, I am humbling. I don't like pictures. I don't like videos of myself. I don't like. And he goes, Sheri, you have a message, and you're being selfish, and you need to get out there and help others. Now, I will tell you, in 2020, I stopped doing it as much because I was too busy doing all these other things. And people started going, my daughter-in-law even said, where are you? You're supposed to be out there at 8:00 every day. I would pre-record. I didn't realize how many people were watching me before the pandemic. So, and then I started conversations with Sheri and Terry Ann, because Terry Ann and I she's a fellow Toastmaster. She does tea time. I do coffee, and we were arguing, but we had a one-on-one, and we realized that if we went out there and we motivate and help people, we did that for a whole year through 2020. We're no longer doing it, but she was scared. She was like, you just jump out there and do. And I'm like, I don't want to. I'm scared. I don't like it. And she's like, what? And I'm like, yeah, let you and I do it though. So we did. And so the more you jump out of your comfort zone, especially if God tells you to, like I said, don't go do stuff just because. You got to know your why when you're doing something, right? And so Terry Ann and I were out there motivating and helping people because the pandemic was depressing.
Beating everybody down.
I'm an extrovert on steroids, and that was so hard, but it was a way for me to be out there, help people, make a difference. And even now people are asking me, where's conversation with Sheri and Terry Ann? And I'm like, oh my gosh. Now I've been doing a little bit on my YouTube channel. You can follow me there. We can put all my link tree where all I am, but I need to be going back out and doing more and doing all that. But I do masterminds, I do coaching, and no, I don't always want to do it. And you're like, what? Yeah, but it's the next right thing for the people who need those services and what God wants me to be doing in my life. Yeah. So if you go out and create the life and business that you love, and with your purpose, vision, and mission, which is chapter 2 of my book, like I said. And chapter 3 is about setting your 6 areas of your life. And then chapter 4 is those people in your life. And then you're not going to like chapter 5. Chapter 5 is called a pre-spending plan, because we're going to spend money anyway, right? And it falls through your fingers if you don't have a plan. So what if you plan where you're spending? Is that going to your goals? And then chapter 6 is your most valuable resource. What is your most valuable resource, Lauren?
I got a lot of most valuable resources, Sheri.
What are they? Time. We can make more money,
Yep.
but we can't have more time. Remember when I almost died back in 2019? Oh my God, that freaked me out. But I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to die 3 days before my son's wedding. I'm going to ruin, the whole. And
Yep.
I just wanted to get through that because I'm Sheri Berger. They told me it'd be a year for me to be eating stuff. And I'm like, nope, I just picked myself up. You know what? That's not how it worked. But God taught me a lot in the middle of that trial, right? It wasn't fun, but God still has me here.
Yep.
So you're still here. You still have a purpose.
Yep.
You have a vision. You have a mission. And even if you don't own your own business, if you're doing a job, right? And recently I was listening to a Bible study, and it was about serving. It's about whatever you're doing in your job, home. I love it when women say, I'm just a stay-at-home mom. You're not just a stay-at-home mom. You're a stay-at-home mom. And primarily I did that, right? I have always had a job, but primarily I took care of my family first, because that's important. And that's small time in your life, because I'll tell you, my kids all are grown, and you blink and they're grown. But
Yep.
I would go back and do that and nurture them. And I'm also a nurturer on steroids, right? But I was also do a job, right? And my husband supported me in doing all that. But it's about making sure whatever season you're in your life that you're living it. But you don't have to own your own business. You could go to a job. But I loved how I was listening. Like I said, it was about being a servant. I mean, are you doing it for God, or are you doing it for people? Me, I do my life for God and what God wants, right? Even when I show up as a mom, a wife, a businesswoman, whatever my hat is, because us as women, we wear
a lot of hats,
and we try to do it all. We can't do it all, but we can have it all. But we need to outsource and have other people supporting you along the way, in wherever season you are in your life. So I don't know. That's some of my 2 cents in what I have to say. But
one thing I've heard a lot lately, and I say this because I think we try to force a lot of things. I'm sure you've mentioned it. And
you got to slam the doors.
Well, and to me, we get frustrated because I'm trying to do this, and it doesn't go on our timeline, right? Because it's not our timeline. But it's that we say, okay, why is this not happening? Why? Because whether you have that big vision, whether you have whatever vision you have, please have one. But it's, how the heck do I get there? I don't know what to do. And you've said it a lot, and it is the next right thing. Because I am a planner. I have not been as good recently, but I am a planner. I like to know what's going on and when to do it. I have my planner next to me. I have to write everything down. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to have this done by this time. Okay, great. You can have a timeline. You can have that date. But for today, for the week, what's the next right thing? And then when it doesn't happen, or when the timeline is not what you thought it would be, then you shift, you pivot. Everybody loves that word now, pivot, because it was all that was ever said during COVID. But it's so very true.
Well, and you had to pivot. The businesses that pivot. And I say, if you have you said a vision, a purpose, but if you have what you want to do, if it's not written down and written in steps, and I don't know how I have a coach. I'm a coach, and I have a coach. I have mentors. How do you not have those people in your life? Because to move from here to there, making my pun, but to do that, you need those people. And if you don't write it down, right, and you know about SMART goals, but if you don't have them, I want to lose weight. Okay, good. You can wish that all day. But if you don't have a plan in it, it's not going to happen. I want to grow a business. You don't have a plan in it. I want to find my next opportunity. Do you have a plan in it? Right? So all your areas and even relationships. I used to say family, but not everybody has family, and relationships are important. So what are you doing in that? And chapter 3 is all about setting goals in, like I said, those 6 areas of your life. And if you don't have them and habits to back them, and I think you need people to hold you accountable and help you see the forest. That's what I do, right? I help people see the forest amongst the trees. And so, and what you do is so important, right? You do this go with the gut. You do things, you do a lot of public speaking. You and I know each other, well, from joint friends at Toastmasters, but we also have been at conferences that we both spoke at. And all those things that you do, they matter. And you probably, did you like public speaking when you first started, Lauren?
I am one of the weird ones. I actually have always liked it. I have not always been good at it. And I've talked to a lot of people. I am the same. I still get nervous as crap when I'm about to go on for something and I overthink everything and I'm like, okay. But I am a weird one that I actually do like it. But
I like it now. I do it right. But I still get nervous. But getting nervous before you jump on something is not a bad thing. People actually like skydiving. Something my husband, I think, wants to do. I'm never going to do it. But you're going to get nervous before you do it. Roller coasters, you get nervous before it, right? I don't want to do roller coasters. I don't want to do, right? But public speaking is like that. You're going to get nervous before. But I guess we're to the end of your spectrum. I mean, your segment.
And, if you're doing something big, I think you're going to get nervous. You're going to have that. But Sheri, I appreciate your time. I appreciate you being on. And if anything, you have very much proven my go with your gut and then please keep going.